All right, folks, what a way to top off a show that has had 3 U.S. senators and 1 former congressman and the great Ralph Peters and John Fund. We are joined right now by our friend Dr. Ben Carson, former chief of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins University Children's Center and the Carson Scholarship Fund. And that's at www.carsonscholars.org. Hello, sir.
Hi, how you doing?
Good to talk to you again. Always a pleasure. I don't even know where to start. There's so much going on. Let me ask you a question because you are a doctor. You know, with this marijuana craze that you've been talking about and that's been sweeping, well, not sweeping the nation, but the craze has. Thank goodness the legalization hasn't yet. Am I nuts or the people who say, you know, there's no long-term effect, there's no proof, there's no studies that show blah, blah, blah. I mean, I've always been aware of, or at least I thought I was, that smoking marijuana on any kind of regular basis is bad for you and has long-term ill effects for your brain, no?
Well, we have known for a long time that people who engage in such activities can have flashbacks months and years after usage, that a lot of their abilities can be impaired at the time of use. So why would we throw into the mix something else that can impair people? We have enough impaired people already.
Yeah, it does. You're absolutely right. They say, well, look, alcohol this and alcohol that. You're right. So if you're saying, well, that's bad, so why bring something else that you're saying, yeah, it's bad, but we already have alcohol, so let's bring this. It just makes no sense.
You know, logic has completely gone out of the window. It's been tossed to the wind. It
has. And do you believe that, I mean, it's inevitable that marijuana, I mean, if I've seen it once today on CNN, I've seen it 100 times. The new polling, they show not year by year, but the last, 5 years that they show where they took these polls, it goes back, I guess, 25 years or so, and it's the support for marijuana being legal is skyrocketed. First of all, are we headed there, do you believe, as a nation? And secondly, what does that say about us?
Well, it says that we're much more interested in pleasure than we are in taking care of the severe business that faces us. And let's look for ways to escape those things rather than actually face them. We have kinds of problems that have in the past destroyed nations facing us. And we would like to do almost anything and divert the attention by any means necessary, rather than rolling up our sleeves and fixing the problems.
Well, you talked about the other day, I forget where I saw you, about, how we're headed towards a hedonistic society and or at least more and more hedonistic activity and how, it's politically incorrect. You're not supposed to talk about it. But I would assume that you would say it's the marijuana is just one aspect of what you're talking about, correct?
Right. We've reached a point where if it feels good, do it. And let's get rid of all the societal constraints that have in the past led us to be a highly civilized group of people.
And is it too late to turn back, or could someone such as yourself, in conjunction with others that are young right now and might benefit from your scholarship foundation, but others who are on equal footing with you as far as age and experience and stature right now, could people like you change us, head us back to where we used to be?
Oh, I have by no means given up. By any stretch of the imagination, there are lots of logical people. What's happened is many of them have been intimidated. The PC police, the media, have beaten them into submission. They're afraid to come out and say what they really think. And they've allowed really a very vocal minority to convince them that, in fact, the vocal minority is the majority, and anybody who doesn't think like them is way out of whack.
Well, go ahead.
That was the plan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I often sit here and say, after watching an interview with a Obama administration official or someone who's talking like Jay Carney representing the president or someone in the media, that if you don't believe that the sky is green and the grass is blue, then there's something wrong with you. They want you to go find out why you don't agree with that and change accordingly. When in fact, obviously, a majority of Americans don't agree with that, but they're trying to make it. They're trying to turn the tables that there's something wrong with you if you believe in good old traditional American values, the American dream, working hard, and traditional marriage right on down the line, not legalizing pot. Then there's something wrong with you. And you know what? To an extent, at least with the impressionable people and young people, I'm afraid it's working.
Oh, it's working very well because they've been able to co-opt the mainstream media. And the biggest hope is that eventually the mainstream media will realize that as the country goes down a path of self-destruction, it will affect them as well. And then they will perhaps start thinking a little logically and start to analyze things appropriately and start to do their job.
Well, what do you think the chances of that happening anytime soon are?
You never know. You never know.
We're talking about. Go ahead.
In the meantime, we just have to continue to sound the alarms and continue to speak out, because as we do that, more and more people will be encouraged to speak their beliefs and not to be intimidated.
We're talking to Dr. Ben Carson here on the Steve Malzberg Show. What do you make, speaking of the mainstream media, although it's just symptomatic, the Melissa Harris Perry comments about Mitt Romney's son, adopted grandson, where she mocked it and made a joke about it, and the panel did, and then she tweeted an apology the next day, but it was far from the tearful apology that she gave over the weekend, which was a week removed from when she actually said what she said. I'm not looking for her to be fired, certainly, but do you think she was told to give that kind of a tearful apology, or can someone be moved so far removed from the event itself and realize they did something so wrong?
Yeah, well, I suspect there was some significant counseling that took place, but I hope that she thought about what she said and realized how ridiculous it was. Let's hope that people from both sides of the political spectrum can sometimes do some introspection and understand the error of their way. And certainly we should be willing to accept that apology. But, we really need to get away from the meanness, the mean-spiritedness that is becoming acceptable. We should not accept it. We should rail against it.
Let me ask you a question here. You're talked about as a prospective presidential candidate. I know you and I have talked about this almost every time we've talked, and it's too early, as is what you've always said. And that's still your answer, right? I'm not gonna hear an interview later tonight, and you're gonna say, "Well, if only Steve had asked me." You're still no decision, right? No decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, don't hold your breath.
Okay. So don't hold my breath that you'll run, or don't hold my breath for a decision.
Either one.
Really? Well, that's new, saying don't hold your breath that I'd run. So you're leaning against running?
I'm not. I have never intended to run. What I've always said is, if circumstances presented themselves in such a way that there were a lot of people clamoring for me to do that, and there was no other candidate that was really receiving a lot of traction, I would certainly have to give it consideration.
So something could happen to make that happen, but right now, you don't see it, and right now it's don't hold your breath, and you don't intend to run, right?
I'm not planning on it.
Okay, that's good. So I was going to ask you about Chris Christie today, who is going to run, I'm sure, signing into law the Jersey version of the DREAM Act. This after being against this kind of thing for years, and now he signed it because apparently New Jersey, where I live, has so much money that they could afford it now. Instead of alleviating my tax burden, he's doing that. And he took the opportunity to blast Washington. He said, this just shows by signing this bill how we could all get along, unlike in Washington. So I was going to ask you, is this typical Christie to you, or do you think that, he has Republican best interests at heart?
Well, I think there are a lot of politicians who are just that, politicians. What we need to think about is not so much DREAM Act or any other kind of act. We need to think about, are we being fiscally responsible, and can we afford it? If we can't afford something, then we really shouldn't do it. It's like when you get on an airplane, they say if there's an emergency, the oxygen mask will drop. Put yours on first and then administer help to somebody else. That's what we got to do. We got to put our oxygen masks on. We got too many issues here going on. And unless we do that, we're going to destroy ourselves, and there'll be nothing for anybody.
Yeah, and I think you are involved with the plane one way or another, so I appreciate you doing this. Thank you, Doctor. As always, we look forward to talking to you again.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Dr. Ben Carson, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. All right. Very interesting, because I don't think he's ever said he has no intention of running for president. I don't think he's ever said – I've never heard him say that. I've never heard him say don't hold your breath. That's pretty new, I think. Hey, how much news could one show make in one day? That's what I want to know. We're coming back. We have one final segment. I want you to hear Jeopardy. How much do you think the people on Jeopardy, who are pretty smart, except if they're Wolf Blitzer, when he was on Celebrity Jeopardy, I don't think he knew anything. That's not to say I would, but he didn't. Anyway, for the most part, they're pretty smart. They're pretty intelligent, and they know their stuff. How much do you think, in the category of, I think it was news programs or news anchors, how much do you think people knew, or the group of contestants in that particular Jeopardy show knew about news anchors? Well, we're going to give you a little look at that category and how the contestants did. All that straight ahead in the final segment of the Steve Malzberg Show, right here on Newsmax TV and radio.